Imagine this. Deep in the Colombian jungle, jellyfish-shaped capsules holding shimmering creatures are discovered, and experts whisper that it is only the tip of the iceberg. If the leak is genuine, where else might such secrets be hiding? We have gathered footage that will make you question the familiar sky. From flickering lights to previously unseen craft that twist physics into knots. Do not forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and of course, let us go. On the 13th of January, 1996, the systems of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, registered something extraordinary. The center's routine is to track missile threats and hostile aircraft. Yet that morning, its radars picked up an unidentified object that entered Earth's atmosphere above São Paulo, Brazil. The object, plunging rapidly about 200 kilometers northeast of the metropolis, resembled neither a missile nor a satellite, nor an aeroplane. Within mere minutes, it struck the ground near the town of Varginha, thereby launching the most scandalous ufological saga in Brazilian history. Soon after impact, residents began filing reports of strange phenomena, and the intrigue deepened when stories circulated about unusual beings. At dawn, a student noticed in a narrow alley a tiny, oil-skinned figure, barely 1.3 meters tall, with an oversized head, 3 long fingers, and not the slightest trace of clothing. A little later, 3 friends, Lillian, Valkia, and Katya, crossed a vacant lot and froze in shock. Amid the tall grass, crouched a terrified humanoid of brown, almost bronze color. Smooth skin, a large head with 3 protuberances and huge crimson eyes. The girls swore they felt its fear and pain as if by telepathy. The investigation gained a new twist when rumors emerged from the local hospital. Staff whispered that the military had delivered several patients with painfully thin bodies and red eyes. Medical personnel were escorted out of the ward under oaths of silence, yet one nurse still managed to glimpse extraterrestrial features. Intimidation, cover-up attempts, and stern warnings only fanned talk of large-scale suppression. It is rumored that wreckage recovered there possessed a self-healing effect. One could crush a fragment into a ball, and a second later, it would unfold itself as though nothing had happened. Thus, gossip, mystical beings, and wonder materials wove together into Brazil's most tangible nightmare. The year was 1974 in Manaus, capital of Amazonas state. An ordinary evening appeared routine until residents looked skyward. There, multicolored lights flared, at first hanging soundlessly, then tracing impossible trajectories. Luminous discs shimmered in every hue of the rainbow and moved so slowly they seemed suspended. Yet the strangest part began when the mysterious bulbs descended lower. People felt heat, inexplicable anxiety, even panic. Some suffered burns as if from a microflash. Witness statements multiplied while answers remained absent. In one village where an object literally crashed, a boom resounded, a white plume of smoke shot skyward, and animals went berserk. Farmer Aurelina saw a shiny cylinder hurtle over the farm, while her husband Ureo recounted how the contraption frantically hopped through the air before vanishing behind a ridge. Driver Carlos, speeding along the highway, dared to follow the strange craft and was first on the crash scene. The stench, an ammonia and rotten egg mixture, was so suffocating it stole one's breath. Carlos picked up a fragment, light as aluminium, yet when squeezed, it crumpled and then instantly returned to its original shape. There was little time to ponder. Soldiers cordoned off the area, dispersed witnesses, and later 2 men in black suits who knew exactly where his family lived, advised Carlos to forget everything he had seen. The Amazon Delta, 1977. The island of Koresh plunged into a nocturnal nightmare for months. Fiery orbs flew overhead and beams shot downward, blistering people, leaving punctures in their skin, and the sensation of radiation burns. panicked villagers organized light watches. All night, they kept bonfires blazing, set off fireworks, and fired weapons into the sky to repel the unwanted visitors. The Brazilian Air Force announced the special operation Saucer, yet after 2 months, the military produced not a single, convincing piece of evidence. The legend grew when years later Captain Weirang, head of the mission, died under mysterious circumstances. Those who believe his death is tied to the flying discs insist to this day the truth about Koresh was never revealed. On the 27th of September 1989, an ordinary courtyard football match in Voronezh came to an abrupt halt amid a fantastic sight. First, a pink glow appeared in the sky. Then, an orange-red sphere, about 3 meters in diameter, hovered before the children. It winked out, reappeared, and finally, from it, stepped a 3-eared humanoid, followed by 2 more beings, one much taller than the other. A scorched circular patch remained on the ground, and shortly afterward a small silver robot rolled out of the UFO. Soviet authorities, surprisingly serious, dispatched scientists. The TASS news agency hastily reported cosmic material found on site, yet the sample proved ordinary hematite. Elevated radiation levels were deemed insignificant, comparable to post-Chernobyl background. Even so, the tale of the red sphere and 3-eared visitor secured a permanent place in Russia's ufological annals. The night of the 5th of October, 1967. A shrill whistle, then a deafening bang echoed through the tiny fishing village of Shag Harbor. A glowing object crashed into the harbor waters. At first, there were fears of an aircraft accident. Laurie Wickens and his friends immediately raised the alarm. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police contacted the rescue center in Halifax, and soon the crash site was occupied by fishing boats, the Coast Guard, and even the Navy. Yet no matter how thoroughly they scoured the area, no wreckage and no bodies were found. Over time, researchers posited that several objects were involved, with some possibly hiding underwater. The Shag Harbor incident remains one of the most enigmatic episodes in Canadian UFO history. Late August 1976. 4 friends embarked on a canoe trip through the remote lakes of Maine. On the night of the 27th, they observed an intensely bright sphere in the sky. Hovering silently, it would approach, then pause, until it suddenly hung directly above their boat. And then, blankness. Under hypnosis, the men later recalled being taken aboard a craft where humanoids with enormous eyes conducted what resembled medical procedures. Ufologist Raymond Fowler studied the case in detail. His book, The Allagash Abductions, electrified the press. Skeptics shouted, "Collective hallucination." Yet, to this day, there is no answer as to where those nighttime hours vanished and what the 4 friends truly experienced. The night of the 19th of September 1976 became a stern test for the Iranian Air Force. As soon as a dazzling star ignited above the sleeping city, duty officers scrambled 2 F-4 Phantom II interceptors. The first pilot had mere seconds to grasp that all instruments failed, communications cut out, and the aircraft plunged into mute darkness. Once he broke off, the systems revived. The second crew, led by Major Parviz Jafari, experienced the same. The radar locked on, panels went dark. From the belly of the bright disk, a tiny sphere detached and shot toward the interceptor, then drifted down somewhere beyond the city limits. At dawn, soldiers combed the desert, yet found no debris and no crater, only fervent rumors. Thus, the Tehran episode joined the roster of cases in which military aviation literally went blind before the unknown. On the 29th of December 1980, Betty Cash, Vicky Landrum, and her 7-year-old grandson Colby were driving home along a back road near Dayton when the forest lit with a pulsing glow. Above the trees floated a gigantic diamond, as though forged from incandescent metal. Their car stopped. The women stepped out and were blasted by searing heat that stung their skin and blanked their vision with a milky haze. As the object slipped away, the sky roared with rotor blades. 24 helicopters pursued the vanishing gem. Worse awaited later. Betty became nauseous, her arms blistered. Doctors likened the symptoms to radiation sickness. The women sued for compensation, yet the military replied dryly, there were no exercises and no helicopters that night. The story stands as a symbol of how even burns sometimes fail to persuade official structures to acknowledge the obvious. Autumn 1989. Residents of the small town of Eupen gazed up and fell silent. Overhead, as though along a ruler, glided a silent triangle outlined with lights. That was only the beginning. During the next 18 months, Belgium experienced a veritable parade of UFOs. The climax arrived on the 30th of March, 1990, when duty radars at Glans caught a target and scrambled 2 F-16 fighters. Yet while the jets prowled the night sky, the mysterious object, as if chuckling, vanished from the screen, reappeared behind them, and dissolved again. Over the entire period, more than 2,000 reports were filed. Police, soldiers, doctors, voices of doubt drowned in the chorus of witnesses. There is still no official conclusion today, and the black triangles have become part of Belgian folklore. The fireworks of New Year's 1983 had barely faded when residents of Kent Cliffs, New York, saw a gigantic V-shaped structure sliding slowly above the forest. From that evening until the summer of 1984, the region endured an avalanche of reports. More than 9,000 sightings of colossal boomerangs strewn with headlights along their rim. At times, the shining monster stretched from horizon to horizon, drifting so quietly that people switched off their car engines to confirm it truly emitted no sound. Ufologist Philip Imbrano compiled an entire archive of testimonies from homemakers to National Guard officers. Yet, owing to its local character, this epic long remained an internal secret of the Hudson Valley until it finally thundered across the nation. The Apache Sitgreaves Forest, Arizona. On the evening of the 5th of November, 1975, a logging crew was returning from felling when an orange sphere flashed through the pines. 22-year-old Travis Walton leapt from the truck and stepped closer. One beam sufficed. The young man was hurled into the air and sucked into the radiance. His companions, certain their friend had been killed, sped for help. Police searched for Walton 5 days until he suddenly phoned home from a roadside booth, disoriented and exhausted. In the ensuing months under hypnosis, he described metal corridors, gray figures, and strange instruments surrounding an operating table. His story became the basis for the bestseller The Walton Experience and the film Fire in the Sky. Skeptics insist it was a prank, yet even half a century later, no one has explained where the young lumberjack spent those terrifying 120 hours. Since we are speaking of abductions and disappearances, here is a fresh leak that has roiled the internet. Journalists allegedly obtained footage of a secret government operation. Deep in the Colombian jungle, a metallic disc crashed. Photographs show charred trees, a ring of soldiers, and transparent capsules inside which rest creatures resembling glowing jellyfish. Bulb-shaped heads, long tangled tentacles. Does it look like cinema? Perhaps. But what if this is exactly the proof skeptics have long awaited? Share your thoughts in the comments. On the 4th of November, 1957, 2 civil aviation controllers were on duty in the tower of Kirtland Air Base, New Mexico. At first, all seemed routine. A flicker of white light crossed the runway. Within seconds, however, the light began to maneuver as though tracing invisible loops. The officers grabbed binoculars and were stunned. A 20-foot egg with a bright searchlight beneath it hung motionless before them. The UFO hovered for exactly 1 minute, as if studying the surroundings, then shot into the clouds. Radar tracked a target traveling faster than any jetliner. In a later Project Blue Book report, the incident was explained as a private plane's botched landing. Only the controllers repeated until their dying days. They had seen not an aeroplane. Thus was born the legend of the egg visitor, which still makes control tower windows tremble. The 7th of November, 2006, shortly after 3 in the afternoon, United Airlines mechanics and pilots were preparing an aircraft for departure at Gate C-17 of O'Hare Airport when a perfectly smooth metallic saucer hovered directly above them. A ringing silence prevailed. The object floated for about 5 minutes at an altitude of roughly 1,500 feet and then shot vertically upward as if from a cannon, punching a neat portal through the cloud ceiling. The Federal Aviation Administration's first reaction was optical illusion, weather phenomenon. Yet a Freedom of Information Act request revealed internal emails in which officials animatedly discussed the event. No formal investigation followed, and witnesses, from ramp workers to the captain, still insist it was a real object, and they saw the hole in the clouds with their own eyes. Let us jump to 2015. During an aircraft carrier group training exercise, onboard radars caught a peculiar return. Pilots took off, switched on infrared cameras, and captured a pale, elongated object resembling a gigantic mint candy. "Did you see that? It is rotating," one aviator exclaimed as the UFO executed impossible bursts, from 0 to supersonic without visible propulsion. In 2020, the Pentagon confirmed the footage's authenticity, yet merely shrugged at the question, what was it? Intelligence analysts labeled the encounter an unauthorized aerial intrusion, and aerodynamics experts still scratch their heads. No known aircraft behaves that way. Meanwhile, the name Tic Tac has cemented itself in ufological vocabulary, becoming shorthand for a 21st century aerial enigma. On the 15th of September, 1994, a tiny school called Ariel, on the outskirts of Rua, where cicadas chirp instead of bells, was enjoying recess. 62 pupils, from the smallest to near teenagers, dashed onto the lawn and suddenly fell silent. Above the low shrubs hovered silver discs that glittered under the African sun. 1, 2, 3, as if someone had carefully arranged them along an invisible path. The main drama unfolded when 2 craft touched down at the far fence. From the glare, figures in black skin-tight suits emerged, their heads carved from graphite, their eyes huge, dark, and pupilless. The children clustered at the wire mesh. "They're staring right at us," 10-year-old Emma recalls. Later, many spoke of strange mental pictures, as though the visiting planet were warning humanity to protect nature. At first, teachers wrote it off as imagination, but when each child was asked separately to draw what they had seen, the pages filled with nearly identical discs and long-eyed beings. BBC reporter Tim Leach, hardened by war zones, called the testimonies the most persuasive of my career. Harvard psychiatrist John Mack interviewed the pupils and emerged stunned. The mass hysteria hypothesis collapsed under scrutiny. Thus, an ordinary recess at a remote African school became one of the best documented childhood contacts in ufological history, a fact that still stumps skeptics. On the 13th of March, 1997, exactly at 8 in the evening, residents of the outskirts of Flagstaff and Phoenix simultaneously looked up. Above the mountains glided a colossal V-shaped silhouette, each lamp along its edge shining with the brightness of a football field. Witnesses swore the object measured a full mile. Its black belly blotted out the stars. A second act unfolded 2 hours later. A line of steady orbs flared near the Sierra Estrella Ridge and slowly dropped behind it, as if practicing choreography. The military hurried to calm the public. Merely an A-10 Warthog exercise. Flares. Yet the explanation failed to match memories of a giant triangle flying too low, too silently and plainly, unlike a formation of attack jets. Skeptic illusionist James Randi suggested observers had seen ordinary aircraft from the Snowbird program rehearsing night flight. Nevertheless, thousands of Arizonans, including future Governor Fife Symington, remain convinced. They saw something far beyond earthly technology that evening. Christmas night, the 26th of December, 1980. A United States Air Force security patrol at Woodbridge Base, Suffolk, noticed a pulsating glow in the dark pine forest. Sergeant John Burroughs and aircraft technician Jim Peniston went to investigate an aircraft crash and encountered a triangular object 3 meters high, hovering barely a meter above the ground. Its surface gleamed like molten glass, and along the hull ran inexplicable symbols. Peniston later claimed he touched the craft and a stream of binary code flashed through his mind. At dawn, they found 3 perfectly round indentations in the soil and an elevated radiation level. 2 nights later, Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt led a new team into the woods. His tape recorder captured the tremor in his voice. "My goodness, it is back." Beams pierced through the trees, and the object's red core split into stars, disappearing and reassembling. The United Kingdom Ministry of Defense waved it off. No threat, case closed. Yet Halt's audio, military reports, and physical traces turned Rendlesham Forest into Britain's answer to Roswell, a place where mystery seekers still roam, hoping to glimpse a glint of that Christmas marvel. From the deserts of New Mexico to the humid thickets of the Amazon, from a schoolyard in Africa to a snow-dusted base in Suffolk, mysterious craft continue to challenge our understanding of the sky. They blind pilots, freeze radars, and leave behind burns, codes, and nothing but questions. Do you believe in UFOs? Share your story. Perhaps it is the missing piece of this grand mosaic. See you in the next investigation.